Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here. Welcome to the channel. I apologize. I'm posting way later than I usually do, but if I'm completely honest with you, I just couldn't even focus today. Most of you that follow global news will understand the situation that's happening in Ukraine, and it's something that I've been struggling with. Not that I have any personal ties to Ukraine, but just the thought of what is going, what families and people are going through in Ukraine right now. It doesn't make me feel good. And just know that I fully stand in support of Ukraine, and I have donated to Ukraine charities that have been officially linked by the Ukraine Twitter account to do what I can to try and help out families that need the support in Ukraine right now. I could go into geopolitical discussions for days here. In fact, I've always wanted to start a channel talking about politics and geopolitical issues, but you're here for Wildrift. So is G2A. They're sponsoring the channel. Reference link in the description below. I want to talk a little bit about the matchmaking changes. You might have seen this. They've started rolling out today. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the changes and what they actually mean and whether I like or dislike them. I will give you the TLDR. I think they're mostly good. I think even as they self-admit on this post, some of them are some short-term band-aid changes that probably aren't going to have real impact, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the changes and what they actually mean. You guys can read. I'm going to link this article. I'm not going to read the article out in its entirety, but what I am going to tell you is essentially they found that the data was confirming that there were matchmaking issues. They also saw that there were matchmaking issues, especially in high-ranked play, so people in Diamond and above. And they were saying that the data confirmed what people were feeling. So if you were complaining about matchmaking specifically in Diamond and above, you guys definitely were not going crazy. I personally felt the issues over the last few weeks, that there was some serious issues in Diamond to Master level that were causing problems. Also, they are addressing VP gains and VP losses. I've always called it LP, but VP is the number of points... Oops, sorry guys, you might have heard my son just woke up, so had to take a quick pause. Let's see, where did we get to? Okay, so TLDR, high rank has been going haywire, and they kind of realized it. Some important things with this first paragraph, a lot of it is mostly just explanation, but this is a clarification that I think is really important. If you queue up as a 5, you are guaranteed to face another group of 5. You will never queue into a 5-man team if you are not a 5-man team. That's a common misconception that I saw thrown around a lot in the YouTube comments, on Reddit, on socials, saying that I'm queuing into 5-man premates. You'll never queue into a 5-man premate unless you are another 5-man premate. However, this was part of the reason that we've been seeing so many LP gains by 5-man queues in Challenger, because it forced you into matching against other 5-mans. It would sometimes match you with 5-mans that were way outside of the accepted skill gap. Challengers matching into 5-man Diamond teams, for instance, and you would get absolutely slaughtered. And so you'd find these guys who were clearly way better as a 5, dominating every single ranked game they played because the matchmaker forced them into a matchup versus another 5, no matter how unfair that matchup may have looked. I mean, I think there were limits. You probably couldn't match into an Emerald team as the challengers, but realistically, it would then match you into like the closest possible 5-man you could get, even if that skill gap was relatively large. And then put into context that it was pro teams playing as 5, you could see that even if you had a challenger solo queue 5-man team, you were probably going to get slapped by the pro teams playing that particular game mode. And whilst I agree, I do think that when I played 5-man modes, it was the most fun I've ever had. There needs to be some way of balancing the fairness of that, especially when you're applying VP gains to the solo queue ladder. Okay, so here are the main changes. Today, we have already had an expansion of Diamond and Master tier. That is to say that if you are heading towards Diamond or you're heading towards Master tier, you should be able to get there more rapidly. And essentially, they're trying to slowly migrate more people out of Emerald into Diamond and more people out of Diamond into Master tier. This is what I call the Band-Aid solution. This isn't actually changing the skill level of the players that you're matching. This is Wildrift redefining the borders by which they classify those players. So really, if you have someone that is lower skill and not playing well, now the game will just say, well, actually, they are your level. They're diamond. They're not emerald. I think they realize, and I think most people realize, that this is a temporary measure. But this links back to what I said in the sense that I actually think just doing away with ranked borders in general is a good way to kind of... One second, he's awake again. Okay, he's not sleeping, but he's chilling for the time being. Maybe he wants to come up and say hello in a minute. Okay, so essentially, what this really... Oh gosh, what have I just done there? Essentially, what this really is they are... It's like the Smurf badge, but they're actually just making it actual borders. Like I said, I think this is a short-term solution, and it's all about perception of ranked games. This is why I always said removing the borders of loading in borders would be really good, because that kind of blanket removes the perception that the person that you've got on your team is bad before you even load into the game. They should definitely get rid of it in Champ Select, by the way. Just don't have borders in Champ Select, or don't have icons in Champ Select. That'd be really nice. But that's why I've always kind of advocated for removing ranked borders in its entirety. But then I suppose you'd have nothing to show off, which is part of the problem. But this is a way of improving perception of ranked games by, or at least removing the perception that it was the matchmaker that was at fault, especially in high-tier games. My inclination is that the ranked population at these tiers was too low, and therefore the matchmaker was expanding beyond what was considered relatively normal. And therefore, by expanding these ranks, you are looking at improving the perception of the games without actually improving the quality. But I never really felt like this was quality to begin with, and I want to make that very clear. I think people scapegoat ranked borders as a way of dealing with games that are part of the natural ebb and flow of MOBAs. I think that this is going to be a way of essentially improving perception of ranked games, but I don't think it will actually improve the quality. And what I mean by that is that I actually don't think these huge matchmaking differences have ever really resulted in a massive change in quality regardless. I think the problem is the perception of that quality is lower because of those ranked differentials. This really isn't going to change the quality, or shouldn't change the quality of games. It's merely going to make you think that the matchmaker has improved. But that's fine, because there is probably an argument to say that if you think that a game is going to be more balanced, you approach it and your mindset is different. I think there is a big mindset hit when you go into a game and you're master and you see an emerald, you're like, what is going on? That probably changes the way that you play the game. I think by essentially trying to level that perception playing field before you even go in, it might actually result in better quality games overall. But anyway, like I said, this is a short-term solution and probably isn't going to massively change the quality of games. It's just going to change the way that you think about them. Capping VP losses in Diamond. They basically want to stop this, and I'm someone that is plagued with this right now. They're trying to stop it so that you constantly lose more VP than you gain, and this is good. Again, it's going to make people climb more consistently and put them in higher tiers, which is probably good again for perception of ranked games. But I think this was the most frustrating thing for me in its entirety, and this is only good. No one should have +10, -15 unless you are playing at way below your MMR levels. No one should have this. If you're even, you should have even MMR gains. If you are higher MMR, you should be accelerated more quickly. But this absolutely, to me, was a massive issue that I had a real problem with, and I'm really glad that they've made this change. This is a huge win. Doubling the weekly cap of ranked fortitude. I think it's just giving people more incentives to progress. Cool. That's like a small thing. Motivation to play ranked is always good. Essentially, they are reducing the maximum allowed skill gap between both teams, which essentially is going to make high tier and pro teams have to wait longer to match. I personally think this is a great idea, and it should reduce elo inflation at the high levels, although it's a little bit too late for this season, but maybe for next season. I also think that, you know, if you've got a full pro team, a full challenger team, they should be forced to wait in queue until another team of similar skill level jumps into the queue. And if there isn't another team of similar skill level, they should just be told, there should be something that says, unfortunately, we can't find a team of similar skill level for you right now. We suggest that you you come back and try later, or play in smaller groups. Because to be completely honest with you, you should never really. It's not a fun game for anyone when a challenger team goes up against a diamond or a master team, because they're just gonna stomp them. And it's just not a fun game for anyone. It's not a fun game for the winners unless they really, really, really care about those VP gains. It's definitely not a fun game for the losers. So, you know, I feel quite strongly on that point. It's important to remember that there is no fix for matchmaking. Our algorithm has to constantly balance keeping queue times short. This is really important. Keeping queue times short, maintaining fair games, and giving you the freedom to select the position of your choice. Remember, when they included position select, that massively changed the way that the matchmaker worked. Before, you were just kind of free for all for a position, right? Now that, and I think role queue is good, but you have to accept that role queue skews matchmaking significantly. And finding the right balance needs to work for all players, not just a specific skill group. And that is really important as well. Even though high elo players generally tend to complain the most, you need to realize that any matchmaking changes are going to affect players from across the board. A feature that many have requested is simply restrict pre-made teams from playing at certain ranks. This was actually a first choice to solve this issue, at least temporarily. Unfortunately, in order to do this at specific ranks and not just well for everyone, we'd need to release a full patch with a new App Store download. So we opted to make the changes above until we can address the issue more broadly. Reading between the lines, maybe expect a patch later on where you would no longer be able to play trio queue or pre-made at master and above. And on that note, it's extremely important to note that these are just temporary fixes. We're hoping to implement a more permanent solution in patch 3.2. To ensure that teams want to play together competitively can still do so, we would likely not restrict pre-made teams outright, but instead alter their VP gains. This is probably the best solution in my opinion. I think that if you're playing in a 5-man pre-made and you're matching into a very low skill tier, you should get like 0 to 1 LP for a win. Like legitimately, you should gain nothing if you're matching into bad teams. Longer term, we are looking at the competitive experiences offered by a rank queue, and we're still assessing if a split queue system may serve different types of players better. I think reading between that lines is that split queue is maybe down the line, but we're not sure if we have the player capacity to adequately fill 2 sets of queues. And one harsh lesson that we've learned from Vainglory is by splitting queues in a player base that is already relatively small. I'm not saying that wildrift's player base is small, I'm sure it's quite large, but splitting queues when your player base can't sustain both queues at the same time is never going to be a good thing. There we go. That's my thoughts on the changes and my occasional input from my 10-week-old son. Hope that helps you understand them. And I personally think they're relatively decent. Good changes all round. Like I said, some perception changes in there and some real changes, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future.